The Art of Commerce is a podcast featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. Hosted by Anish, a data-obsessed creative director, and Jinx, a growth-obsessed CMO. Listen on for actionable insights for the modern marketer.
If you think being a CMO is just about managing campaigns, you're already behind. A CMO needs to be a storyteller, a technologist, and a growth architect all at once. Jinx, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, when we think of a CMO, when we were younger and we said, hey, we want to aspire to be a CMO, what does everyone think about? Let's make a great campaign. Let's make the 1984 ad of Apple, throwing the hammer in the screen, right? That's not what today is. There's too much technology. There's too much competition. There's too much noise in the marketplace to do that. So really, as the CMO of today, you have to think about a couple things. One, you have to understand how your company makes revenue and how it drives profit. So it's not just how I make money, but it's does that make money actually yield bottom line results for the company? And if you're not thinking that way, you're just a campaign manager at best. You're not a CMO. So the CMO has to think that way. Secondly, the CMO has to think about all of the pieces of marketing working together. Advertising, media, commerce. They have to work together in a unified experience. And you've heard me say this multiple times, but I'll say it for the audience. You could have the greatest ad ever. You could have the 1984 ad that Apple produced in 1984, right? If you have it today, though, you have that beautiful ad. You have it in bad media with a bad sales experience, a bad digital commerce experience. That is bad advertising. Great advertising is a great piece of creative served in great media that's contextual and targeted with a digital commerce experience that's connected to the customer, personalized, echoing the campaign so that that customer buys. And if you do all those things, that's great advertising. The CMO needs to know that.
Jinx, that's so well said. I think Gong agrees when you make a great creative and it will blow up on its own. Like what you just said, if you make the iconic 1984 Apple brand campaign and upload it on YouTube, there's a chance no one might even notice it.
Yeah.
And I see this all the time on YouTube. You got channels who post amazing creatives.
That's right.
And it's got like, 1,000, 2,000 views?
Yeah.
And what you just said, there's just so much noise around it.
Yeah. And it's a good point about it, right? Some of our best performing creative at Sling was done by influencers. But think about it. Why? Because it was in the platform. It was relevant to the platform. It was relevant to the social video. It was relevant to YouTube. Now, I'll admit where we fell short was we didn't have the digital experience to capture that traffic once they came from the advertisement. But those first two legs of the stool, the right creative and the right media, were there. And that's something, again, we want to get to the mountaintop. We can't do that unless we go piece by piece. So in that case, we figured out what's the right creative for the media. Now the next step is how do we capitalize on that traffic, which is the holy grail.
Oh, it's beautiful. So if I'm picking up what you're laying down, the CMO of today needs to be three things. You have to be a storyteller. You have to be a technologist. You have to understand all the platforms. And you need to be a growth architect. You need to own the P&L for the business. Is that right?
That's right. Because a lot of times we think about brand versus performance and all that. I can't stress it enough. Those are meaningless distinctions. I mean, I've made my name as the acquisition guy, right? I bring people in. We can grow the company. We can optimize performance results. That doesn't matter if you don't have great creative, great brand that layers on top to drive sales. Brand and performance are meaningless distinctions. They work together to do the eventual goal of what you want marketing to do, which is sell the product or service of the company, generate revenue, generate profit. A lot of times we say, I'm only going to focus on creative brand, or I'm only going to focus on media. But really, the brands that win are the ones people remember, not the ones that we just keep optimizing the performance. And vice versa, the creative that works the best is relevant in the media that's the best. And that's the optimization there. So you have to think about both things.
Oh, that's fantastic. Jinx, what advice do you have for someone like me who wants to be a CMO sometime in the future if that term even is relevant? Because how does one look at it going forward? And if you're working in marketing in this day and age, how do you attune yourself to develop that perspective?
Well, that's a great question, Anish. We talked about it a lot. And, for me, I think the CMO really needs to be that T versus an I. And so just the I is really deep. I'm a paid search expert. I'm going to go really deep. I'm an SEO expert. I'm going to go really deep, which is great, right? And that CMOs need that and companies need that. But I think the CMO is really a T. How can I understand a piece part of all of the functions so that when I'm able to sit here and talk to the team, I know how each individual piece works together and I can understand that full experience. And quite frankly, I can bring the team up from their eye and see the forest through the trees. And then we start to really make some magic together.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. I've actually tried to incorporate that along my career, okay? One of the feedbacks that I have received in the past is, you've done a bunch of social marketing, you've done a bunch of creative direction, you've done a bunch of brand strategy, and you don't really come across as focused. How do you break that perception and help someone understand the importance of being an inch deep and a mile wide?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's about the storytelling. So remember, okay, so we're talking about CMOs, and we're talking about how to make advertising for external parties. Remember, you're a marketer for the internal folks as well, to prove that you're ready, to prove that you have enough knowledge. So the way you bring it all together is to tell the story. It's not that you're unfocused, right? It's that you know the piece parts of the marketing journey. And because you know enough to be dangerous in every place, and hopefully you've got some wins in every one of those functions, you're able to tie that together and say, it's not that I'm unfocused. It's that I know these parts and I can lead a team to manage the full marketing stack. And that's what I was able to do, and that's what worked for me.
There's so many great insights there. Jenks, speaking about a CMO needing to be a good storyteller, one of my favorite quotes is, those who tell stories rule the world. Okay. You have to tell great stories to connect with the customers, to connect with your internal stakeholders as well. How do you, as a CMO, work on your storytelling skills?
Yeah, every day, all of the time. And the important part is it's not one story because you have multiple stakeholders as a CMO. The thing you'll hear me say again, other than there's no delineation between performance and brand, which I will say about 100 times in this podcast. But the second thing is that the best friend of the CMO is actually the CFO. Because if you want to get investment into what you want to do, you have to convince the CFO. You have to use data and you have to use storytelling. However, to the CFO, that is a different pitch than to say your employees who you need to motivate and rally. Maybe it's less data oriented, maybe it's more emotion driven, but you have to be able to modulate that story to different stakeholders. To do that, you have to understand what motivates them. So to answer your question, Anish, you work on storytelling every day. The way you do it is you put yourself in the mind of the recipient and you say, how does this recipient want to learn this information? What is the best way to communicate to them? Is it through emotion? Is it through data? Is it being, flamboyant and gesticulating? Or is it being reserved and quiet and letting them come to you with the knowledge? You have to learn yourself, you have to learn people, and that's the way that you're going to tell your story. There's actually a really great, I think it's African proverb, where it says, if the listener doesn't understand the story, that is not their fault. That is the storyteller's fault.
Well said.
And I believe that wholeheartedly. So that's what you got to work on.
How do you not lose sight of the big picture or the main story when you're kind of break it down into versions for these different recipients?
So you have a main theme, right? I'll give you the example.
Give an example, please.
We're trying to make sure that the CFO and the rest of the team understands the value of marketing, particularly what some people might call awareness marketing, which again, There's no distinction between performance and brand. So how TV and how social impact sales, right? We did a lot of incrementality testings, match market. We had we basically broke up the country and had different marketing mixes by geography. And we proved with this experiment that TV and social were the best things to invest in. They drove the most incrementality, right? And so that's the story. Now, when I go to the CFO, it's data, right? The same headline. Why? Data. Okay. How do you know? Break it down. Go one level deeper. Well, how do you know you're not biased? One level deeper. How do you know that, because he's going to question every single thing we talk about.
What does the CFO care about?
All the CFO wants, and pardon me for my CFO friends if I'm oversimplifying your life, but they just want to make sure that the money they put in is the money they get back and then some. And it depends on what your strategy is. Some might say, I want to 2x my return. Some might say, hey, if I make a quarter off every dollar we spend, that's still 25 cents I have in my pocket I didn't have before. That's 25% ROI, right? Or, so that's all they really care about. And if you're able to show them that data will give them that ROI, they'll take a bet. Now, it's always still a bet, They, to that point, they want the least risk possible. So that's why they're going to ask a multitude of questions to make sure that what you said has a basis and won't provide a lot of risk, right? So that's the CFO.
And that's where knowing everything, a little bit about everything, helps you kind of into a big narrative that can satisfy your stakeholders.
Exactly right. We've been talking about the CFO a lot, but I'll now talk about what gets the employees motivated, right? Because, again, we'll use the same example, that headline. Social and TV are the best for incrementality. This is what we proved, by the way. You should do your own incrementality test. It may be different, but for us, this is what it was. That's highly motivating to employees, particularly when they have been able to justify maybe paid search because there's a 1-to-1 ROI. Oh, we get sales from paid search. Well, no, duh. But what drives paid search? This other type of advertising. So they are very motivated when they say, finally, we have data to do really great creative, right? We have data to really invest in these sexy channels, right? So that headline is the same. TV and social are driving the most incrementality. But what it means for them is a completely different situation than the CFO. And they're not probably going to ask as many questions, although luckily at Sling and Dish, we had really curious people that wanted to. But they're going to get motivated and they're going to say, let me run. Yes, now the CMO's in line, the CFO's in line. We're going to do this. But then the key is, as the CMO is saying, wait, hold on, not yet. Let's not forget what we talked about. What does the creative look like? Not all creative is great creative. Let's make sure it's great. Let's make sure it hits the points we want. Again, no distinction between brand and performance. It's got to be great. It's got to look great, feel great. It's still got to sell. It's got to be in great media. Where are we buying? Are we buying on the channels that our customers, our prospects are on? Are we buying to the targeting of our prospects, And then what's the sales experience? Whether it's a digital one, whether it's a call center, whatever, how are we threading the needle? And that's, the CFO is going to ask you a lot of questions, right? About this, that, and the other. But that's how you motivate a team with data, but you keep them on task and you keep them focused because it's not fun and games, right? It should be fun. We have fun doing it, but it's a lot of work. And we proved out that it's going to be successful or can be successful, We got to make it successful by execution. Ideas are great. Execution is what it matters. And as a CMO, you have to stress that to the team all the time. That's your job. Why you're best friends with the CFO is because to a certain degree, you're channeling them a little bit because while they want return on investment, what do you want? Return on investment.
That's true.
You and the CFO want the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so when you go to your team, you have to channel that. Otherwise, Anish, you'll see really great creative. You just mentioned it without the results.
This is The Art of Commerce, featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. If you found value in today's episode, follow the show, leave a review, and stay tuned for more insights for the minds reshaping modern marketing.